Coming up on 5 Minute News. Myanmar security forces kill over 100 protesters in horrifying day of bloodshed. Iran and China sign 25-year cooperation agreement. And Saudi Arabia sees fields of green with major tree planting drive. It's Sunday, March 28. I'm Anthony Davis. Myanmar security forces killed 114 people, including some children, in a brutal crackdown on pro-democracy protesters on Saturday, the bloodiest day of violence since last month's military coup, news reports and witnesses said. The killings, which took place on Armed Forces Day, drew strong, renewed criticism from Western countries. British Ambassador Dan Chugg said the security forces had disgraced themselves, and the US envoy called the violence horrifying. Military jets also launched airstrikes on a village in territory controlled by an armed group from the Karen ethnic minority, and at least 2 people were killed, a civil society group said. Earlier, the Karen National Union said it had overrun an army post near the Thai border, killing 10 people, including a lieutenant colonel, and losing one of its own fighters as tensions with the military surged after years of relative peace. Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, the junta leader, said during a parade to mark Armed Forces Day that the military would protect the people and strive for democracy. Demonstrators turned out on Saturday in Yangon, Mandalay and other towns, as they have done almost daily since the February 1st coup that ousted elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The Myanmar Now news portal said 114 people were killed across the country in crackdowns on the protests. At least 40 people, including a 13-year-old girl, were killed in Mandalay, and at least 27 were killed in Yangon. A military spokesman did not respond to calls seeking comment on the killings by security forces, the airstrikes, or the insurgent attack on its post. The deaths on Saturday would take the number of civilians reported killed since the coup to over 440. China and Iran, both subject to US sanctions, signed a 25-year cooperation agreement on Saturday to strengthen their long-standing economic and political alliance. Relations between the two countries have now reached the level of strategic partnership, and China seeks to comprehensively improve relations with Iran. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was quoted by Iran state media as telling his Iranian counterpart Mohammad Javad Zarif, "Our relations with Iran will not be affected by the current situation, but will be permanent and strategic," Wang said ahead of the televised signing ceremony. Iran decides independently on its relations with other countries, and it's not like some countries that change their position with one phone call. The accord brings Iran into China's Belt and Road Initiative, a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure scheme intended to stretch from East Asia to Europe. The project aims to significantly expand China's economic and political influence and has raised concerns in the United States. China has spoken out often against US sanctions on Iran and partly contested them. Zarif called it a friend for hard times. Wang met President Hassan Rouhani ahead of the signing in Tehran. The agreement was expected to include Chinese investments in sectors such as energy and infrastructure. Rouhani expressed appreciation of Beijing's support for Iran's position on its 2015 nuclear deal with world powers, in which it agreed to curb its nuclear program in return for the lifting of international sanctions. Saudi Arabia aims to plant 10 billion trees in the coming decades as part of an ambitious campaign unveiled by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Saturday to reduce carbon emissions and combat pollution and land degradation. The de facto ruler of the world's top oil exporter said that Saudi Arabia aims to reduce its carbon emissions by generating 50% of the country's energy from renewables by 2030. Riyadh would also work with other Arab states on a Middle East Green Initiative to plant an additional 40 billion trees, which the prince said would be the world's largest reforestation program. The statement did not provide details on how the ambitious planting project would be carried out in a country with limited renewable water resources. The world's largest producer of desalinated water has in the past said it would use cloud seeding and recycled water to plant local trees that require less irrigation, including in urban areas. The Saudi Green Initiative is part of the Prince's Vision 2030 plan to reduce its reliance on oil revenues and to improve the quality of life in the country. The kingdom, the region and the world needs to go much further and faster in combating climate change, Prince Mohammed said. He said the share of clean energy production in the Middle East does not currently exceed 7%, and that Saudi would work with regional partners to help contribute to a reduction in carbon emissions resulting from hydrocarbon production in the region by more than 60%. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen Podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.